I am Jewish. Born into a devout family, raised within sacred rituals, able to recite passages from the Torah before I even understood the words I was saying. But I never believed in Jesus. I never believed in stories of people rising from the dead, and certainly not in prophetic visions about Israel or the fate of the world. I wasn't opposed, I just didn't see the need. I believed in science, in ethics, in reason, in the idea that living a good life was enough. I taught school. I raised children. I paid my taxes. I gave to charity. I loved my husband. To me, faith was a beautiful heritage, but one that belonged to the past. I folded it neatly and placed it in a memory drawer, right next to old black and white family photos. I never imagined that the very day I gave birth to my second child would also be the day I died. Everything happened so fast. A scream, then the blood pressure monitor plunging, hurried footsteps, needles, masks, blinding white lights. I heard my husband shouting my name, a nurse calling for the doctor, and then silence. A kind of silence I had never known. Not quiet, empty, severed, as if I had just been unplugged from a self I once believed was me. I remember that moment clearly, because it was unlike any dream. I didn't see myself floating above a hospital bed. I didn't see a tunnel or a light at the end. I saw nothing. Just myself. No skin. No hair. No name. Only awareness, suspended in a space without before or after. No form. No sound. Nothing to compare it to. A state where human language fails. I wasn't afraid, but I didn't feel peace either. What I felt was a rawness so complete, I could no longer hide behind any identity. I had once thought of myself as a mother, a wife, a teacher, a Jew. But here, no one called me those things. No one mentioned me. No one came. No one asked, "Who do you believe in?" or "What have you done?" And when there was nothing left to define me, I began to panic. Not because I was dying, but because I was no longer anything. The first question that rose wasn't, "Where am I?" It was, "Does anyone still know I exist?" I never thought of myself as a bad person. I had spent most of my life doing what was right. But in that moment, I felt like a lost child in some spiritual department store, with no one looking for me, no one remembering me, no one calling my name. I used to laugh at people who claimed to have died and come back. I dismissed all those prophecies about Israel's future. I believed only the superstitious clung to those vague, mystical things. So what was I, a modern, educated, rational, grounded woman, doing here, in this space of nothingness, and what exactly was I waiting for? And then I heard a voice. Not through my ears. It came from within me, as soft as breath, but piercing straight through to the deepest part of me, the part one had kept hidden my entire life. This voice didn't say Naomi. It didn't say daughter. It didn't say believer. It spoke only one sentence. It is time for you to know the truth. But the truth is not something you know. It's something that strips you bare. And I never imagined that the one who would reveal mine would be the very one I had rejected my entire life, Jesus. And he was about to appear. Not to judge me, but to ask the one question that would shatter my soul. When that voice echoed within me, no religious image appeared. No cross, no angels, no fire, no lotus petals. Just a whiteness, not a color, but a sensation of blinding white. As if I had stepped into a realm no one had ever entered before, a place untouched by stories or language. A silence so sacred that even the soul dared not move, afraid to disturb its holiness. I couldn't see my body, but I knew I was still me. There was no mirror, yet I felt every unhealed wound, every word left unsaid, every choice I had never dared to face. There was no gravity, yet each memory pressed down like a stone. I wasn't alone, and yet I was. Because I could hear voices from my past, clear and unmistakable. My father saying, "A Jewish daughter should not ask so many questions." My mother was praying softly while lighting the Sabbath candles. My voice, sharp and logical, once mocked her with, "God doesn't answer anyone, Mom." I wasn't remembering these things. I was facing them. Everything I had once labeled harmless now returned like a blade slicing through my mind. Because here there was no lying. No excuses. No personas. No logic. Only truth. I wanted to run, but I had no legs. I wanted to scream, but had no mouth. I wanted to shut my eyes, but had no eyelids to shield me from what I didn't want to see. And that's when I understood this was the beginning of judgment. Not the kind that comes from outside, but the kind that rises from within. A silent confrontation between me and myself. No hiding. No defense. And I saw a Naomi I had long forgotten. An 8-year-old girl hiding her mother's Bible under a pillow, afraid she might be discovered, was doubting. A 20-year-old theology student was laughing in a lecture hall when someone mentioned faith. A 35-year-old wife rolled her eyes when her husband shared a sacred dream. Each fragment didn't make me feel ashamed. They made me realize something else, something deeper. All these years, I hadn't rejected faith because I was strong. I had rejected it because I was afraid of being loved in a way I couldn't control. Love that doesn't ask for proof, doesn't need logic, doesn't come with explanations. And I, a teacher, a woman who thought she had all the answers, had never learned how to receive love the way a child receives bread from their mother's hand. I began to cry, not with my eyes but with my entire being. A sob without sound, without form, yet it made that silent space tremble, like a string being plucked by some gentle ache too deep to describe. And in that trembling, the first light appeared. Not blinding, not glorious, just warm, like a fireplace in winter. Like the kitchen light, my mother always left it on when I came home late. And I knew someone was coming, not with footsteps, but with a presence so overwhelming, so familiar, so tender, that my soul collapsed under the weight of it. Not from fear, but because it was too real, too kind, too known for me to remain standing. I didn't need to see a face to know who it was. I only had to feel that love. And I knew the very one I had spent my whole life denying was standing right in front of me. And then he asked the one question no one had ever asked me before. Do you truly know who you are? I didn't see footsteps. There was no figure approaching. But the light that light as soft as a mother's milk, as warm as a first memory, drew closer and closer until it was no longer light at all, but presence. Not something seen or heard, but something the soul remembers. As if it had always been there, long before you were born. As if it had lived inside you, waiting patiently for the moment you would dare to look back at it. I didn't see his face, but I knew. Knew him the way a child recognizes a mother's voice in a crowd. Knew him with the kind of knowing no one teaches, the knowing of the soul. It was Jesus. There was no halo, no host of angels, no cross, none of the religious symbols I had studied. He didn't belong to any denomination. He didn't come to represent anyone. He was simply present, fully, and it was that fullness, that undivided wholeness, that undid me completely. I didn't feel guilty. He didn't accuse. I wasn't judged. Instead, I felt fully seen and still loved. And that was something no one had ever done for me. People loved me because I was good, because I was smart, because I was kind. But here, in this space of perfect white, Jesus looked at me as if I didn't have to do anything. I just had to be. And that love with no condition, no boundary, no bargaining was what brought me to my knees. I cried, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't ashamed of my weakness. I wasn't Naomi Cohen. I wasn't Jewish. I wasn't a wife or a mother or a teacher. I was just a bare soul, being loved without a reason. Jesus didn't speak right away. He simply was there, as if waiting for me to feel the weight of his presence before he gave it words. And when he finally did speak, his voice wasn't loud. It wasn't commanding. It was a whisper, like someone reading a poem meant only for you. He said, "You've spent your whole life trying to prove you're right. But you never asked, if you're so right, why are you still so lonely?" That question pierced the frozen core of my heart like a needle through glass. No one had ever asked me that. Not a professor, not a therapist, not a friend. But Jesus had just touched the exact place I had hidden. The place where I pretended to be okay, competent, complete, just to avoid admitting. I had no idea who I was. I wanted to argue, to say that I had lived a good life, that I had never harmed anyone, that I believed in humanity, in science, in ethics. But before the words could leave me, Jesus gently asked another question. And when you needed love the most, did any of those things answer you? I broke down. There was nothing left to defend with. No language left to hide behind. I saw it all, the exhaustion of all those years teaching with a numb heart, the bitterness I felt when my Christian friends kept their distance, the quiet sorrow when my husband stopped praying with me. I saw a Naomi who had pretended to believe in logic, only because her heart had once been wounded by a love distorted by religion. Jesus didn't excuse me. He didn't explain away my pain. He simply opened a space so I could finally see myself in a new light. Not a light of judgment, a light of healing. I asked him, "Why me? I didn't believe in you. I'm not worthy." And without hesitation, Jesus answered, "It's because you didn't believe that I came." He said the truth isn't reserved for those who already believe in him. Truth is light, and light doesn't ask for permission to shine. It only needs the tiniest crack in the wall of the heart. And mine, shut tight for over 40 years, had just opened for the first time. And as with all things real and alive, once is enough for life to rush in. But he didn't just come to heal me. He came to show me something far greater, the destiny of Israel, and what awaits this world if we do not change. And what I was shown next is something no one has ever dared to speak aloud. Jesus didn't speak much. He didn't need to. Every word he spoke was like a stream of light, not just entering my ears, but reaching into a place I never knew existed. Not the mind, not the heart, not even the soul as religion defines it, but something deeper, the innermost center of being where all the silent questions live, where the hunger for meaning dwells, where all the broken pieces no one has ever touched quietly wait. He didn't tell stories. He showed me, not with visuals, but with sensations so vivid, so precise, it felt sharper than sight itself. As if each particle of light were a living scene, a moving truth, a warning wrapped in silence. I saw Jerusalem, not as a city of stone, but as a bleeding heart. Every wall was etched with words written in tears, division, pride, fear, self-righteousness. I saw people in religious garments walking past each other without a greeting. Worshippers kneeling side by side without ever meeting eyes. Children raised to distinguish, not to connect. I saw the eyes of priests, rabbis, imams, pastors that no longer carried light, only weariness and suspicion. And then I heard Jesus speak not aloud, but within me. Jerusalem is the spiritual heart of humanity. But that heart is decaying, because people have clung to the form and forgotten the heart. Then I saw America, my home. A two-headed dragon, both radiant and self-consuming. I saw people invoking the name of God to gain wealth, to start wars, to protect power, to spread fear. I saw flags. I saw guns. I saw scripture weaponized like bullets, verses ripped out of context and hurled like grenades. I saw a nation that once bore light, and the light wasn't gone. But it had quietly slipped away from the place where it was born. Jesus didn't speak about politics. He spoke about the soul behind politics. He showed me there are no purely good people, no purely evil ones. Only souls starving for love, misled by fear. I saw the future, not as prophecy or doom, but as a choice suspended in the air. If humanity chooses love, there will be light. If it chooses fear, there will be ruin. And Jesus said, no prophecy is a sentence. Every revelation is an invitation. The only question is, will humanity choose to listen? I asked him, and what about my people? What about the Jews? He looked at me with eyes that dismantled every wall I had ever built around my heart and said, they were chosen not for privilege, but to be a light. But when that light becomes a barrier, they too will be the first in need of saving. I wept, because I saw myself in that. I had believed being Jewish was enough. Being moral was enough. But I had never truly desired to be transformed. Jesus didn't condemn anyone. He simply held up a mirror all-knowing, yet impossibly gentle. And in that mirror, no one can stand tall without shedding tears. Then he asked me, Naomi, if you return, will you dare to speak of these things even if no one believes you? I wanted to say yes. But my throat closed up, because I knew if I spoke, I might lose everything I had built, my reputation, my position, my respect. Maybe even my family. But Jesus didn't pressure me. He simply placed his hand on my shoulder, not as a command, but like a friend asking one last question before letting you go. Do you want safety or truth? And before I could answer, he led me to a place no one talks about, a place where souls who were once enemies now wept together, because they realized they had never truly been apart. And what I saw in that place changed the way I would see humanity forever. When Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder, the space around me seemed to melt into a fluid light, alive, moving, without edges or form. There were no boundaries, no directions. Only a feeling as though I were stepping into the very heart of time, where past, present, and future no longer stood apart. And in that place, I was no longer alone. I don't know what to call it. It wasn't heaven. It wasn't purgatory. It was unlike anything ever painted, preached, or imagined. But one thing was clear. This was a realm where souls could truly see one another, without language, without names, without religion. I encountered 3 people. None of them spoke. But every gaze held the weight of an entire being. The first was a Jewish soldier. No weapons. No flag. Just eyes full of sorrow. He stepped toward me, placed his hand over his chest, and bowed not with words, but with the full gravity of a soul that had once lived for an ideal and now realized that even the noblest ideal can become a veil, when it dims the truth that love is always greater than borders. The second was a young Palestinian girl, around 10. She bore no visible wounds, but her soul carried an ancient grief. She looked at me not in anger, not in accusation, but in a way that shook me, because her eyes held a question humanity has avoided for centuries. If God is love, why do people kill in His name? The third was a black man, dressed in white. The light around him was soft, like a breeze. I didn't know his religion, but I felt he had died for his faith. And when his eyes met mine, I heard a resonance echo inside me. Truth belongs to no one. It belongs only to those willing to lose themselves to find the light. No one said a word, but I understood. This was not a place of judgment. It was a place where forgiveness was born. Forgiveness without apology, without proof. Forgiveness simply because, at last, we remembered we had never been separate. I wept, not out of guilt, but because I saw a truth greater than all the logic I had ever lived by. Religion is not the path to God. Religion is the garment. God is the love within us, the purest part, buried beneath fear, pride, and division. I saw souls embracing one another, no questions asked about what they believed, no one needing to ask, "Where did you come from?" Just eyes meeting eyes, arms wrapped around arms, a peace deeper than any treaty, a kinship that transcended every bloodline. Jesus stood behind me silent. He didn't lead. He didn't explain. He simply let me see. Because only when your soul witnesses the truth for itself can you ever be incapable of turning away from it again. I turned to Jesus, my voice trembling. "I can't stay silent after seeing this." He nodded gently. "Then are you ready for what comes next?" I didn't know what was waiting, but I knew one thing with absolute clarity. If I ever returned to the life I left behind, I would never again be the same. Because what I was about to hear wasn't meant to be kept in the quiet of my heart. It was meant to be given to a world that has forgotten who it is. I thought I would stay. That place, that nameless, borderless realm without tears yet full of a kind of holy ache, held something that made me never want to leave. I didn't see my mother there. I didn't see ancestors. But I saw myself whole, unburdened, pure. I wasn't trying to prove anything, wasn't striving to be accepted. For the first time in my life, I didn't fear judgment. I didn't need to be right. I just wanted to remain and dissolve into that gentle light forever. But then Jesus looked at me, not as a judge, not as a distant deity, but as a father asking his child, "Now that you've seen your true home, would you go back to guide those who are still lost?" I couldn't answer. My heart longed to stay. But my soul knew, if I remained, I would be keeping this for myself. And if love is truly love, it's not meant to be kept. It's meant to be given. Jesus spoke, not with force, not with threat. You can choose. Stay in the light, or return and carry it into the darkness. I asked him, my voice trembling, "But if I return, will anyone believe me?" He smiled not with teeth or lips or face, but with a radiance so honest, so luminous, that I felt I could fall into it and weep forever. Not everyone will believe, but those who need to hear will recognize it, because they won't hear it with their ears. They'll hear it with the part of their soul that still longs for what's real. I was silent. I thought of my 2 children. I thought of the newborn whose voice hadn't yet said mama. I thought of my husband, the man who still didn't believe in miracles. And I understood, love doesn't always keep the ones we cherish beside us. Sometimes love means returning, so they can find the thing they never dared believe could exist. I had no wings, no glowing halo, but I felt as if I were falling from the highest heaven back into my old body, as if I had been reformed in a new mold, one made of light, now placed in flesh. And I knew I was coming back, not to continue the life I had before, but to begin living truly for the first time. Jesus spoke only one final sentence before the light dissolved around me. "They will call you crazy, but don't forget they called me that, too." I returned, but the world I came back to no longer resembled the one I left. And the first thing I had to face wasn't the joy of resurrection. It was the skeptical eyes of those I loved most. And I realized sometimes the hardest part isn't speaking the truth. The hardest part is living it when the whole world turns its back on you. I opened my eyes, not slowly like in the movies, but as if a bolt of electricity had jolted my soul back into a body that had already gone cold. My first breath wasn't life, it was pain. Pain from a body that had collapsed. Pain because the light was gone. Pain because I knew this world would never again feel wide enough to hold what I had just seen. A nurse screamed. The heart monitor beeped wildly. My husband buried his face in his hands, sobbing. The room erupted as if witnessing a miracle. But they didn't know the real miracle wasn't that I came back to life. It was that I had truly died and returned in a way that no one expected. When I began sharing what I had seen, the room that had just overflowed with emotion shifted into a cold, awkward silence. My husband stared at me, unblinking. My mother, an Orthodox Jew, sat in stunned silence, as if I'd just betrayed our entire family. The doctor gently suggested it might have been a hallucination caused by oxygen deprivation. Friends visited with polite smiles, but I could see the hesitation in their eyes. They wanted to believe I survived, but they didn't want to believe the story that came with it. A Jewish woman meeting Jesus? It sounded like fiction. A schoolteacher returning from death with visions of Israel, America, and Jerusalem? It sounded like a political script. A mother claiming to speak of the soul and the light? They didn't know where to place me. At first, I tried to soften it. I only spoke of it as a dream. But every time I stayed silent, my chest would tighten as if something sacred inside me was suffocating. Like I was betraying the very light that had touched me. So I spoke. Fully. Without trimming it down. Without smoothing the edges. I spoke about Jesus. About the souls I met. About the truth that lives beyond any religion. And just as Jesus said, they called me crazy. The school board asked me to step down. Friends quietly blocked me on social media. Relatives stopped mentioning my name at holiday dinners. And my husband, the man I loved deeply, began looking at me like a stranger, as if his wife had died and no one told him. I lost my reputation. I lost my career. I lost acceptance. But there was one thing I didn't lose, the faith that had been born in that light. Not a faith borrowed from books or passed down by tradition, but a living faith seen, touched, tasted, and embraced by the core of my soul. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I understand. I used to be just like them. I used to laugh at what I didn't understand. I used to reject love simply because it didn't come in the shape I expected. And now, I don't need them to believe me. I only hope that someone somewhere will hear that quiet voice within their heart, the same voice I once heard, and pause long enough to truly listen. So I write. I write everything down. Not to become famous. Not to argue or prove anything. But so that one day, when someone least expects it, they'll come across these words and know. You're not crazy. You've just touched the truth. And that light is calling you home. I am no longer the Naomi Cohen I used to be. Not because I died and came back to life, but because I saw something that, once you've seen it, you can never live the same way again. Every day I wake up with a trembling heart, not out of fear, but because I know that somewhere today, someone might be standing on the edge, quietly longing for something more real than every theory, every religion, every sermon. I no longer try to explain. I don't argue. I simply testify, not as a witness for a belief system, but as a witness to a nameless kind of love. I write for the Jewish heart that still doubts, for the Christian soul afraid of being wrong, for the atheist wounded by faith without compassion. I write for those who, like I once did, lived rightly, kindly, ethically, and yet no longer felt alive. I don't write to convince. I write to open a door with no sign, no lock, just light on the other side. And those who walk through it do not come because they were forced to believe, but because they've grown weary of believing the wrong things. And I want you, the one reading this, to pause. Not to believe me, but to ask yourself, have I been living inside a limited version of the truth? I used to think religion was a garment. But I saw with my soul that the walls we build, the labels we cling to, the fences we draw around our beliefs, they all cover up the very light we claim to seek. We build systems and forget that God never needed any of them. He doesn't need defenders. He only needs a heart open wide enough to let him enter, not through a book, not through a building, but through love. I once believed life was about defending your perspective. But now I know, sometimes life is about laying that down, stepping into something deeper, freer, lighter, the truth. And the truth doesn't always comfort, but it frees. It doesn't flatter you, but it heals you. I've lost much by telling this story, but I've gained something no one can take from me, peace. A kind of peace that comes when you no longer have to perform, no longer have to be right, no longer have to win. You just have to be true. If you're still listening to me right now, then maybe, just maybe, the truth is knocking at your door too. Don't worry if you're not ready to believe. I wasn't either. But the light doesn't need your belief to exist. It only needs a single crack in the wall to begin shining through. And if you ask me what I still hope for after all of this, I would only say one thing, the truth I learned somewhere between death and life. It's not faith that we lack. It's mercy. And this world will only be saved when we love each other more than we need to be right. If this story has touched something deep inside you, then maybe it's not just Naomi's story. Maybe it's yours, or your mother's, or the story of someone you once distanced yourself from because of a belief. Maybe it belongs to someone out there, crying quietly at night, no longer sure if life is worth trusting. You don't have to die to begin living again. You only need to pause, listen closely, and ask yourself one question. If I am light, have I given any of it away? And if you feel this story has meaning, share it not to spread fear, but to plant hope. Send this video to someone who needs it, to someone who was wounded by religion, to someone who lost their faith, to someone who just needs a little light not to give up on themselves. And if you're carrying a story like this in your own heart, please write it down. Don't let the truth be buried in silence. Don't let your light go out just because the world isn't ready to see it. Because I believe it is the small candles that save even the darkest night.